The Florida Gators are heading to Kyle Field, College Station, to try to beat the undefeated Texas A&M Aggies. Can they do it? Can the Aggies keep a stranglehold, maybe get into the top five? We'll talk about it here in Locked On Gators, Locked On Aggies.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome to this crossover episode of Locked On Gators and Locked On Aggies. I am Brandon. This is Matt. And the Florida Gators, 2-3 right now. Texas A&M Aggies, 5-0. Must be nice. Must be nice. You got year 2 of a coach. I've got year 4. Results are very different. And let's just start with this, right? Florida, 0-2 against teams in the state of Florida, but 1-0 against schools from the state of Texas, now going to Kyle Field, of course, home and away, very big difference. Kyle Field, one of the very few stadiums that Billy Napier has actually won a football game in on the road. In 2022, they did that. A lot of that was Anthony Richardson. But Matt, what do you think, I guess, for this game? What do you think about the upset potential of Florida here?
I think there's obviously, based on what Florida did against Texas, there's some things to take away from that. Like, okay, they figured something out. Obviously, whether it's the offensive side of the ball with Dallas Wilson, who looks like some sort of weird hybrid between Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith at some points during that game. DJ Lagway looked a lot more comfortable, even though he was a little hobbled during that game. He was throwing the ball downfield with confidence, which you love to see. The offensive line was a lot better for Florida, so that whole offense seemingly took a step forward. And if that happens, the way that defense is playing, obviously there's going to be upset potential. And that defensive line looked unbelievable against Texas, which their offensive line was really, really bad in that game. It was horrible. I did an all 22 film review of that, and it was probably the worst offensive line performance I've seen out of the Longhorns, and at least in the Sark era, maybe ever. So it was really bad. And Florida gets a lot of credit for making that happen as well. So it seems like Florida's been kind of a Frankenstein monster of, really good defense, really bad offense. And if they can bring the two together, I think they could beat anybody. So I absolutely see upset potential here, even though it's in Kyle Field.
Which, by the way, that pisses me off so much. I just want to throw that out there, that it's like, if the offense took a month to finally figure things out when the defense has been balling, but you've probably played yourself out of college football playoff area by now, unless you win out, which, considering the schedule, probably not happening. Yeah, it sucks, man. I will say this: Florida's offense, I don't know if that's going to carry over the same way. I said this before the game, that I thought Texas's defense was pretty overrated, because they played Ohio State, sure, which their offense doesn't look amazing either right now. And so they played Ohio State, they played Colorado School of the Mines, they played the Locked On SEC group chat, and then they they just played nobodies, and so their numbers looked awesome, but I didn't think they were incredibly impressive. Like, I thought they were a good defense, but not this world beater that they were made out to be, and that the statistics said they were. And so the offense did better than I anticipated, but yeah, I don't know if that's really going to be a sustained thing, because we've seen Billy Napier do this, where you've got great performance offensively, and then the next week comes out and you go, okay, well, we're going to put up 22 against Charlotte in Gainesville. Like they just do things like that under Billy Napier. Coming out of the bye week, they had 2 weeks to prepare for that game. Texas A&M in this one, I'll be honest, their defense, when Texas A&M's pass rush is going, I feel like they're just damn near impossible to do things against. But it's just, and also, can we take a second to talk about Cashius Howell? Because, oh my God, I feel torn on this. I'm going to be honest with you, Matt. When he entered the portal out of Bowling Green, I wanted him in Gainesville so bad. I did. And he took a visit to Gainesville, and then he took a visit to Texas A&M, and that was that. But he has just been something special for you guys this year, and I envy it so much.
Yeah, he's certainly one of these guys that can completely wreck a game any given Saturday. He can be a little inconsistent at times, but I believe it may have been against Utah State. I think he had 3 sacks in 3 plays, which like who does that? And then he had a sack against Auburn, and now he's got 3 against Mississippi State. So he's got 7 sacks through 5 games. That's unbelievable, and he's really been the missing piece of this defense. That like okay, so rewind it back to last year. You had a first round pick in Shamar Stewart on one side. You had Shamar Turner in that defensive line. You had a second round pick in Nick Scorton on that defensive line. Their sack numbers weren't all that incredible. Why is that? Well, I'm not a defensive line coach. I'm not technically proficient in all those different things, but they weren't getting home a lot. Their pressure rate was high, but they weren't getting a lot of sacks. Cashius Howell has figured out how to get those sacks, and it's really made all the difference because now you're getting pressure on the quarterback. You're kind of throwing things off. Torian York also deserves a lot of credit for being able to diagnose and call out, what other offenses or what the opposing offense is running. But the two of those guys working in tandem in the first and second level have been unbelievable the last 2 games. Now, how much of that is okay? This is Auburn's offensive line, which is burnt toast. How much of this is Mississippi State being Mississippi State, which I think they've gotten a lot better, but it's not like Cashius Howell is doing this against, Tennessee or Georgia or Alabama. So I'm still a little skeptical on how this is going to continue. And I think Florida has a really good offensive line when they're playing well together. They didn't play particularly well against Miami. They played awesome against Texas, who has really good edge rushers. So it has been incredible what he's done. I just want to see him do it on a consistent basis. He's just been very streaky for me, but I like what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned 7 sacks in 5 games, but yeah, 3 of those came against Utah State, 3 of those came against Mississippi State. And it's like, all right, well, then when you look at it the opposite way of going, okay, well, that's 1 sack in 3 games outside of those, then it doesn't look great. But I mean, if he gets hot, man, it's just really tough to stop him. And again, like he's someone who I'm pretty sure I did an entire show on him when he entered the portal out of Bowling Green. Because I will say this, I went to Toledo. Cashius Howell was someone who ruined my life a little bit when he was at BG, especially because rivalry school there. But man, he's just someone that is going to be a beast, and it does feel very, I guess, like it feels like deja vu, I guess, for a Florida fan with Sean Spencer as defensive line coach going, yeah, they're getting pressure, but they're not getting home, because that was kind of the story when he was there too. And I don't think it was his fault. I'll also say that. I'm not blaming him. It just feels reminiscent there of going, okay, like, well, pressure numbers are pretty decent, but you're not hitting home. Overall with this defense, there was 1 game that was just really bad with Notre Dame, and outside of that, 2 strong performances against SEC opponents, which, yes, Auburn and Mississippi State are not the elite programs, but Florida hasn't been that either. Even the 29 point, or we'll say 27 because 2 came off special teams, even the 27-point performance against Texas wasn't exactly incredible. It was, you had a 55-yard touchdown on one of them, another quick touchdown when you got in the red zone, and then a bunch of field goals. It's not like Florida's offense, even though they figured some things out, have exactly been destroying anybody. So I do think this is going to be a real battle of who can string together a performance and who can actually show up here, where Florida's offense has shown up in 1 game. I don't even count the Long Island game, because I think that the starting offense had a ton of miscues in that one. And Texas A&M's defense, some really strong performances, and I'll say 1 bad performance against Notre Dame.
Well, so it's kind of complicated with Texas A&M's defense. Like I generally agree with you in the sense that they've played 1 good offense. We'll say 1 elite offense, because I think that Auburn has potential to have a good offense. I think Mississippi State has potential to have a good offense. And they got torched for 40 points. And they're really a bobbled, field goal or extra point snap away from an overtime there. My thing is there's a way to beat this defense, and it's something that Florida possesses. They have a hard time with physical running backs. Jaden Ball is a physical running back. You saw it on the first drive against Texas. He had, 12 carries on the first drive, something like that. Robert Henry Jr. in the first game of the season absolutely lit them up for 170 yards. Jeremiah Love and Darian Price both had their way. Fluff Bothwell for Mississippi State was having a good game until he got injured. He had
hell of a name, by the way.
Yeah, hell of a name. Unfortunate that he got injured too, but 14 carries for 60 yards. Those are the kind of guys that can kind of hurt this Texas A&M defense, and I think Florida has one, and they have a really physical offensive line when they're, like I said, when they're performing well. So there is things that Florida can do, especially now with Dallas Wilson in there, that I think can hurt Texas A&M defense or Texas A&M's defense. Everything else though has been very, very good, especially on the perimeter with the corners locking down receivers. Des Ricks has been unbelievable. Will Lee has been unbelievable. But if you can get running up the middle physically against them and control the line of scrimmage, then Texas A&M could be in trouble.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that, because that was one thing that I wanted to bring up when we talk about matchups, which is going to come back when we get back with this episode of Locked On Gators and Locked On Aggies. This crossover edition of Locked On Gators and Locked On Aggies is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. Like our players for both the Gators and Aggies, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes simply irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth. Guilty, not going to lie. Whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments, and when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money for people like me and you, where it's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in just minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators and Locked On Aggies, or Locked On Aggies, your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free, whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. And Matt, before the break, you were touching on Florida needing, or a physical running back being a bit of an issue for this Texas A&M defense. And that's something I really wanted to talk about, because for me, the running game is important for Florida, not just because, hey, physical running backs have given Texas A&M's defense a tough go this year, but because Florida desperately needs to play ahead of the sticks. Florida's offense this year, fine against Texas A&M or against Texas, you did a good job. But sorry, is that a cardinal sin that I just conflated the two with just playing them back to back? Yeah, I was saying playing them back to back is not my fault. That's the scheduling there. But against Texas, you played ahead of the sticks and you did a good job on third down. But in every other game, if you've been put into a third, and honestly, even like I know Billy likes to go, yeah, 3rd and 7. Anything closer than that, we're good. I feel like if you're in a 3rd and 5 for Florida this year, it hasn't gone well. And so for me, Jaden Baugh, this offensive line not screwing the pooch would be nice. But I think that's, for me, one of the biggest matchups is just Jaden Baugh keeping this offense ahead of the six, because if you're not ahead of the six, you're probably going to get destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that I thought worked really well for Florida against Texas was not only staying ahead of the sticks, but being able to keep that Texas defense honest and not play everybody up. because like against Miami, when you go back and you watch the Florida Miami game, they were, for the most part, Miami was just sitting back in a cover 3 and making DJ Lagway beat him with his arm because they couldn't get a push up front and run the football. They flipped the script against Texas. I think that's what Texas wanted to do. And then Jaden Ball and the rest of that running game took that away. So I think that that's critical for the Florida offense to be what it's capable of being is to control the clock, run the football, stay ahead of the sticks, and wear down the opposing defense, which is exactly what they did against Texas. And they're certainly capable of doing it against Texas A&M because, pound for pound, I think that the Texas defensive line is probably better than the Texas A&M defensive line. I think the linebackers are probably better. The secondary is where I think that the script kind of flips there for Texas A&M, but that's throwing the football is not Florida's strength right now. It's I think maybe you can agree or not, but I think that most people wanted to see more Jaden Ball in this offense, based after the first couple of weeks. You finally did that, and you got a good result. So I think that needs to continue to be the plan, especially against a team that struggles to stop the run the way that the Texas A&M does. And like I said in the first segment, I know it was a better performance against Auburn. I know it was a better performance against Mississippi State, but it's really hard to really get anything out of that in terms of confidence goes. Like, you like to see it, right? But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, let's see it against another team that can run the football really well. And when Florida commits to running the football and they block well up front, I think that they have a chance to be a really good running football team, like we saw last week. So, yeah, I mean that's definitely something that's going to play a huge role in this football game.
Yeah, for Florida's offense with running the football here, keeping everybody honest, there was a lot of talk amongst the Florida Gators fan base for the first month of the season of, well, they have too many condensed sets, and defenses then just really stack the box and crush you. And when you watch the LSU game, Florida went more spread than they've ever gone under Billy Napier. Inline tight end Hayden Hansen played wide receiver snaps 20 times. Like, that's where he was aligned. They were spreading things out. And LSU was still just disrespecting the hell out of this passing game by saying, hey, we're still going to stack the box, and we're going to make sure that you can't run the football here. Because DJ Lagway was the big problem there. It was DJ Lagway not able to get anything going. And Miami, again, they got to go, hey, we'll sit back, and if you're going to beat us throwing the football, you're going to beat us throwing the football. But I've been saying, if I'm a defensive coordinator against Florida, I'm going to be as disrespectful as humanly possible until you prove you could beat me. And if Florida runs the ball successfully like they did against Texas, which I don't think Texas took the same approach of, we're going to make you beat us throwing the football, then I think you're going to lose. But for Florida, if you can't run the ball against Texas A&M, then you're going to be stuck in these long situations. I personally think on the inverse there, it's Texas A&M is going to need to run the football to win this game, because teams haven't been able to do that against Florida. And if Florida can force, honestly, it is really the inverse, where if Florida can force Texas A&M to obvious passing situations, it's going to be tough. I don't think that Florida is going to get 35 pressures again. I think that was way more indicative of Texas offensive line being, what's the word? Grossly overrated. Yeah, Swiss cheese, whatever you want to use to say their offensive line is bad. Florida just exposed them. Ron Roberts coached the game of his life as the defensive coordinator of Florida. But I do think that making Marcel Reed connect on these passes is going to be really important, because they've been there, right? Like they've been there. I don't think Texas A&M has poor playmakers like I've seen some Florida fans say. I think if you say that, you're kind of just saying that you don't know football, because that's not the case. That's not the case at all. You look at these receivers and they're ballers. Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, which also a guy that a bunch of Florida Gators fans were like, oh, go get. And then now all of a sudden he's a bad playmaker. That's what you're going to attribute it to. No, it's if you can force Marcel Reed into obvious passing situations, that's going to be big. But also, we saw Arch Manning find some success breaking the pocket against Florida. Marcel Reed had himself a day last year against Florida's defense running the football. I think for the inverse, it's going to be, if Texas A&M can run the football effectively and keep themselves in manageable spots, going to be really tough for Florida.
Yeah. I mean, as bad as Texas's offense was in that game, you got to kind of hand it to Arch Manning getting pressured and hit that much and still being able to deliver on some big time throws.
Absolutely.
I don't know that Marcel Reed is look, this isn't a slight at Marcel Reed. Arch Manning obviously hasn't been the quarterback that everybody expected. I don't know that Marcel Reed has the same passing traits that Arch Manning has. You know, being able to keep his eyes downfield, take a hit, throw a deep ball, right basket, those kinds of things. They're just different quarterbacks. So it's going to be a different approach, I think, it has been a different approach all year for Texas A&M. Colin Klein does a really good job of drawing things up to get these receivers in space and get them the ball in space and be able to use their speed and explosiveness to make people miss and get downfield. The running backs are really explosive guys as well. The tight ends are pretty good. This isn't me being the biased Texas A&M guy. I think Texas A&M has the best group of playmakers and explosive players in the SEC right now. At least they're up there. You could talk about a couple of other teams in the SEC, but right now it's hard to argue against Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, and Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens being those guys.
And if we're talking playmakers, Marcel Reed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're in terms of skill positions or quarterback. I mean, Marcel has had a very, very good season. Now, the last couple weeks against SEC defenses, he struggled a little bit more because they're faster, they're more physical. Auburn gave him a lot of problems. Mississippi State, I mean, it was almost a shutout at halftime. Let's not forget that. Texas A&M turned it on in the fourth quarter of this football game to kind of change things up. And even when Marcel has had his most, explosive games or productive games, whatever you want to call it, he was 17 of 37 against Notre Dame passing. 360 yards, which is really good, but he was 17 of 37. So the accuracy isn't always there. The decision-making isn't always there. But if he can get the ball in the hands of guys like Craver and Concepcion and Terry Bussey and Ruben Owens and those kinds of guys, they're a really hard offense to stop. And that offensive line, too, I think is one of the best in the SEC. It's a much different offensive line than Texas. It's physical. It can beat you at the point of attack. It can physically dominate you. How much they'll be able to do that against a really, really good Florida defensive line is another question. But they have been one of the best all season in the SEC, and I expect them to hold up a whole hell of a lot better than Texas's offensive line did against Florida.
Yeah, my fear is that Marcel Reed just has an on day, honestly. Like that. Yeah. That's because even if you do put him in these long situations, like we've seen him have moments where it's like, oh, like it's just clicking right now. It's just clicking. And if he does that, it's going to be really tough. I still go back to last year, and I know that Florida's defense turned it on after the Texas A&M game, but I still go back to last year where you guys didn't even have to. I don't think Texas A&M even attempted a passing play for the final 23 minutes of the game because you just didn't have to. It was ridiculous to see. And this is a much improved Florida defense, but having a quarterback that can genuinely make you pay sucks. Like it just sucks to defend. It does. And Marcel Reed, while he may not have the, I'll say, pocket presence of an Arch Manning, because I think Arch played well against Florida. It was just really, when you get hit 35 times in a game, no quarterback is going to do that, is going to play at a high level there. So I think considering the context, I think Arch played well. But Marcel Reed, I have a bigger fear that Colin Klein, who again, I love him, not going to lie. I have a bigger fear that Marcel Reed is just going to, or that Colin Klein's just going to go, hey, look through your first read or two, and if it's not there, just take off. Just go. Because I think if Marcel Reed does that, that makes him a lot more dangerous than potentially Arch. Because I don't think Florida is going to key in too much on saying against Arch they had a spy almost always. I think against Marcel Reed, their plan might be, let's just try to speed him up and get after him and let him make a mistake trying to throw the football as opposed to anything else. But I do think that if he's told, hey, just look at your first read or two and get going, which is what Florida did with Emory Jones when it was Dan Mullen calling plays, what they did with Anthony Richardson for a little bit before he decided he didn't want to run the football anymore. it works. It's tough to defend, and it opens up everything when you have to defend that rushing quarterback as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so Marcel Reed has this tendency to speed things up a lot when he gets pressured. He's done a better job of it this year, I think. But when you start to get pressure on him quickly, his footwork becomes very janky, and he can move around in the pocket a little bit too much, get some happy feet, and everything just gets a little bit off. So I totally agree with you. I think that should be their strategy with Marcel 100%. The problem is, and this is just the case with any mobile quarterback, I think, especially one with the speed of Marcel Reed, is it's just if he gets outside on you, I don't care who your linebackers are. It's really hard to get to the edge and get in front of him. So I mean, do your safeties have to play down to kind of help with that? Well, you can't because Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion are out there and they're going to burn you down the sideline. I think that's what makes this offense so dangerous is if nothing's there, Marcel Reed can just take off. And that's why they've been so hard to stop. And even when they've had games where the passing game isn't necessarily working, like against Auburn, for example, they've been able to run the football. And my point, like they can beat you in so many different ways. And Marcel Reed does such a good job of using his legs when he needs to. He doesn't overdo it and kind of turn Texas A&M into kind of a one-dimensional offense in that way. But also you got to give credit to Colin Klein because he calls plays that Marcel Reed really likes and that Marcel Reed thrives in when it matters. And I think they're still trying to figure a few things out, but for the most part, I tend to agree with you. I think you just got to speed them up and get them uncomfortable, get them off platform, and make them make a mistake because that's been, kind of the bread and butter like for a lot of these teams. And like against Notre Dame, and I'm kind of rambling on here a little bit. But against Notre Dame, I think that they tried to do that, and they did a really good job of it. The problem was he hit passes downfield and, a few explosive plays in that game that ended up becoming touchdowns or very close to touchdowns. And in other games, that hasn't necessarily happened. So I think that that's kind of the blueprint. I think Florida's defense is a hell of a lot better than Notre Dame's defense. They'll be able to pull that off a lot better than Florida did.
It's going to be a hell of a game. I'm not going to lie to you. This is one of the games where I'm just like, I'm really looking forward to that matchup of Florida's defense versus Texas A&M's offense. Because I don't think people give A&M's offense enough credit. Where I think that, Marcel Reed having an off day could suck and could shoot everything in the foot. But like, if he's on, it's tough. Even if he's not entirely on throwing the football, he uses his legs to pick up a few first downs, extend some drives, and makes you completely change how you're defending Texas A&M. So it could be a true just battle. And we will get to predictions in just a minute here with Locked On Gators, Locked On Aggies. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Wouldn't that be nice? I would like to be right more often, but Florida lost every game I've picked them to win this year, except for Long Island, and they lost the game that I picked them to lose. So fun stuff. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. And playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, Josh Allen passing yards, Marcel Reed rushing yards, Jaden Ball rushing yards, and you're in the game. It's as simple as that. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Locked On College to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. To wrap up this crossover edition of Locked On Gators and Locked On Aggies, I'm Brandon. We have Matt here, and I told you this before we started recording, and so I will go first here to let you rebut with what I feel like you're going to disagree with, but I'm picking Florida to win this game, mostly because I do think that Florida's defense, I think matchup-wise, this is just good for Florida's defense, and like you mentioned, having Florida's offense, Jaden Ball, physical running back, gives Texas A&M issues. I feel like it's just a good matchup. I think Texas A&M will finish having a better season than Florida. I think that Texas A&M will go farther than Florida does because I have no faith that this is going to be like last year where it's like, oh, Florida turned around everything completely. Coaching staff shows me that. Cool. I am picking Florida to win this game just because I think they match up well with Texas A&M. It's not that, it's nothing more than that. It's not a slight at Texas A&M. It's just the matchup works well for Florida, in my opinion. And so I'm going to pick Florida to win. I don't do the score thing, but I'm going to say I think it's going to be close no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that this game is, what's the spread on this game? 7.5?
Yeah.
I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people think it is going to be. The over-under at 46.5 feels kind of about right, I guess. Still, I might go a little lower. I would probably take the under on that because I just think this is going to be a knockdown, drag-out defensive battle. Is explosive and as good as Texas A&M's offense has been. Cormani McClain is one of the best corners in the SEC. I think he's great. That defensive line is very, very physical. Miles Graham is a tremendous linebacker. There's a lot of things about this defense that I agree. I think match up really well with what Texas A&M has on offense. Jaden Ball, I think, is going to be a problem too. I think Dallas Wilson has the potential to be a problem, even though Des Ricks and Will Lee have been awesome to get as the two corners for Texas A&M. Texas has a good secondary, and Dallas Wilson made them look like little kids on Saturday because he's just a beast. So I'm not shocked that you would make that pick. It's something that I think is certainly a possibility. I think Texas A&M is absolutely on upset alert. But here's my thing. Until I see DJ Lagway win a big game on the road at a place like Kyle Field, I think that's probably going to be the difference. And I need DJ Lagway to prove it to me multiple weeks in a row. And start to string together some consistency. Whereas like you could say the same thing about Marcel Reed, but to the nth degree with DJ Lagway. So I'm going to take Texas A&M to win. I think that they're just going to make the offensive plays they need to make it at certain moments that are going to make the difference in the game. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be a tough one. I just have, Texas A&M probably by a field goal or something like that. I think Florida covers. I think Texas A&M wins, and Texas A&M moves on to another really tough game next week. But I think anything could happen in this game. Anything could happen.
Yeah, and that's part of one of the reasons of why I was like, look, I'm not picking Florida for a lot of things until they win or show me they could do something competent, which they did against Texas. I also think Texas was overrated. So maybe that wasn't Florida really putting everything together. Maybe that was Texas being Texas, who, by the way, 0-2 against Power 4 teams this year. Just want to throw that one out there for the team that everybody was like, oh, national champion, greatest quarterback we've ever seen. 0-2 against Power 4 teams this year. I'll take my shots at them. I don't care. I don't like them regardless. So I will say that came into the SEC and wanted to be Kings right away, earn it. But also one of the big things working, I guess, against Florida, and it's one of those I need to see it things. Billy Napier, historically awful on the road. 2022 won one game on the road. 2023 won one game on the road. 2024 2. Not the best. Not the best. They've had their fair share of just crap in the bed. Billy specifically. Honestly, like you said, like I think it'll be close no matter what. I think it could go either way. I think that one of these teams is going to be probably in the college football playoff this year. And I think you could look at the records and see which team I'm talking about with that one. But yeah, that's just how I'm feeling about this. Is I think Florida matches up well, but I could easily see this going not Florida's way at all.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, Brandon, is that there's always games, especially in today's college football. No, I don't think anybody's going undefeated this year. I don't think anybody's going to play 16 perfect games and beat everybody they're supposed to beat and cover everybody they're supposed to cover against. I think that there's a couple of roadblocks or landmines or whatever you want to call them for Texas A&M the rest of the season. I think Florida is one of the biggest Because I think despite their record, Florida is still one of the most talented teams in the SEC. And if you take the Kyle Field crowd out of it early, which is hard to do, you got a shot. And I think Florida absolutely has every shot in the world in this game. I still think Texas A&M wins, but it just seems like one of those games that, and we said this the last couple of weeks because battered Aggie syndrome is a real thing, but it just seems like it's one of those games that Texas A&M could come out and put up an egg or whatever you want to call it. We'll see how it goes. The atmosphere in my head is there for some reason. I can't put my finger on it, but hey, they proved me wrong the last 2 weeks, so we'll see if they'll do it again.
Yeah, Florida makes games weird. That's what it is. Florida, that's it. Like Florida makes games weird. Kentucky makes games ugly. Florida just makes them weird. Like I said, with Kentucky all the time, never argue with an idiot because they drag you down to their level, beat you with experience. That's what Kentucky does. Florida's just like they drag you down to just weird. And that's how they win games. And we'll see how it goes either way. This is Locked On Gators, Locked On Aggies. Catch us every day wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.